Hey everyone. So today we're going to be talking about another kind of distorted thinking. And I think this one is really important because I think it's something that everybody does to a varying degree. I see teenagers do it a lot because there's a thing teenagers deal with developmentally, which is called the invisible audience. And the concept of it is that essentially kids always have this feeling that they're being watched, that there is this feeling that they are being observed. And so one of the things that happens is that we human beings seem to be just sort of constructed this way to sort of always relate things back egoically to ourselves. If you actually look at, say, like developmental psychology as well as Buddhist psychology, you will get into some really interesting stuff insofar as how that works. And so one of the things that we have is this. Okay, so personalization. Let me make that screen a little bigger for y'all. Maybe there-ish. There-ish, that's good. Thinking that everything people do or say is some kind of reaction to you. You also compare yourself to others, trying to determine who's smarter, better looking, etc. Ingrid Helgerson, I see you in chat. Absolutely. I don't think this ever gets shaken entirely for most people. I just don't. I think it's something that regularly sort of impacts us on a very deep level. And I think this one's really important because I want to I don't want to demonize anyone for it, but I also want to be really clear why it's distorted. So the way that this can get, oh, neat, you're a non-binary trans woman and a mom? Pog, same. I have one kid that's my real kid, or at least my kid that I live with, and then I've got two babus in our Discord. Brittany right there is one of my babus. So with personalization, I think the thing to stay clear about is that when we're talking about this is a subtle egocentric way that we always, by definition, view others as though their actions are about us. So an example could be yes, you, Brittany. So an example of this would be you are walking into, say, a gathering, and you suddenly get very, very uncomfortable and very, very discombobulated, let's say, because your sense is that everyone there is reacting to you. So people might move away from you, like they normally would when you're moving through a throng of people. But to you, this could be reflective of the way you smell. This could be the reflective way in which these people are judging you. This is a way in which we sort of make everything about us. And the reason why it's distorted thinking is that even though it's possible for a person, hi Sam Levy, even though it's possible that some of these people could be thinking about you in that way, I want you to notice your own thoughts for a moment. How much time do you actually spend sort of like, I don't know, thinking about other people? If you actually think about it for a while, unless there's a topic or there's something like particularly dramatic going on, not really much. You're usually in your own fucking head. The amount of time we actually waste thinking about other people isn't really that much because often we're just sort of egocentric in that way. We kind of always focus back on us. I feel anxious. I feel this way, all that. That isn't bad. We need to be that way in order for us to function. Otherwise, we wouldn't survive as animals. Hi, Starkbad. How are you? Let's see. Greek Cheek said it's the fundamental attribution error. Yes. Assuming you know why the other person's doing things without having the full picture. I would say that actually falls into a different type of thing. I would say that actually falls into sort of overgeneralization, making a general conclusion based on a single incident or piece of evidence. This is the Facebook syndrome, where you see someone post like a single concept or argue with you on one particular political topic, and you sort of assign how they are as a whole to that. The reason why I think personalization is really important to realize is that I think it can be very toxic and very problematic for us to sort of take on this notion that everyone's watching us and that everything is about ourselves. Often, unless we're in a unique situation such as this one's, like someone like myself giving a presentation, the reality of the situation is that we often just sort of fade in the backdrop. Now, obviously, people with color hair, person of a particular body shape, people who are remarkably attractive, all sorts of thousands of different things, right? Someone walking around in cosplay, right? So the idea is that we assume that everyone can see us and they're always judging and they're always thinking. And the reality is that that's just not the case. They're not actually doing that in many cases. Now, there probably are some times, but the likelihood that that's happening all the time is not really that high unless you stand out in some particular way. And even if you do, it really comes down to a very basic understanding. So before I continue, if you have not subscribed, you should do that. Please subscribe to the channel. We are trying to get to 1,000 subs. We are currently at 922. Also, you can donate at streamlabs.com/transgirltherapist/tip. We are trying to raise $250 to buy a brand new shiny camera. So, with that said, how does personalization affect you? So I want you guys to type in chat what your thoughts are, and I'll talk to Zena about this a bit. And Zena, when we talk about this idea, what comes up for you?
I think I see this with a lot of anxiety. I notice other people like mostly I think it's really easy to get really anxious about something that somebody else is doing. That especially in those moments like if somebody says something to you, right, in like a cranky tone, chances are it's about something going on internally with them and not about you. But I think it's very easy to assume that that is something that you have done or somehow related to you. And really, it might have nothing to do with you at all. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And I think it's easier to understand. By the way, UA Cosplay, sorry that you get panic attacks over that. I would say start low. I mean, that's why I set my goals fairly reasonable. 1,000 subscribers is not that out of the question. If I ever make it to 100K, that would be great. I hope I do. But right now, I just want to get to 1,000. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I think the easiest way to see this is the example I gave earlier, which is like teenagers, right? The notion in which like there's this idea of the invisible audience and the way that people look at you, and there's this idea that they're always reacting to you. Do you remember when you were a teenager and you got really uncomfortable by shit that people did? Or you would find yourself like really like constantly worrying they would be judging you. And the problem is when everyone's doing that, it's basically a powder keg. This is why I think kids are so dramatic and why this often results in a lot of intense emotions, that and hormones. But I think one of the things to be very clear about is that what happens is the reason why people at that age group tend to react in the ways they do is that if they're always on guard, if they're always in the position of thinking, why is everyone paying attention to me? They might start playing up that audience, and they might honestly just start engaging in a different way. Angry Literati said, a question, might this form of distorted thinking manifest itself as defensiveness? Yeah, I think so. The example I just gave with teenagers would make that perfectly true.
Yeah.
Because if you're always on guard thinking everyone's watching, when someone actually does call on you, you suddenly snap and bite their fucking head off. The Greek Cheek said, I struggle with this sometimes. It's been particularly fraught for me recently in parasocial dynamic, where I've been struggling with perceiving expectation from people who consume my work. In reality, the expectations are more in my own head than anyone else. Exactly. One of the things I really try not to do on this channel, and it's something that is really fucking hard, me and Zena try to work on this a lot, is not assuming what other people want. We just make it very clear to ask. But that's also a way we sort of run our lives, right?
Yeah.
Like, you and I are very much of the opinion that sort of getting all of the stuff out on the table is a really good way to sort of discuss a thing. And as such, it's a really good idea to just ask people what is it they need, what is it they want. I find that to be really effective. And as far as other people, I mean, my general goal of any time is that unless this is somehow a threat to your well-being, I would argue that it's arguably true that, how do I want to say that? I'll think about that one for more. I don't have good words for it. UA cosplay question: what would personalization fall in foster care world? I mean, if you have a bunch of kids that have been traumatized or been through a lot of different rough stuff, and all of them are on guard and defensive, and all of them think they're constantly under attack or being perceived, especially if they've been in abusive, physically or otherwise abusive homes, I can imagine that it would be very easy to feel that way, especially if they were sort of hyper focused on, right?
Yeah, I imagine, especially if there were, adults watching them very carefully, which, there are some cases where that might be a thing, depending on, the larger situation that they're in. But that, yeah, I think the distorted part would come in, or maybe, thoughts of assuming that this watching is more than it is, right?
Yeah. Well, and come back to Great Kachik said something about this idea of the parasocial dynamic. And I think that's a thing that we always have to be careful with, is just making it very clear. This is what I was going to say earlier, is that making it really clear what people want. I ask people in our Discord a lot to kind of give me feedback. And one of the things, and I hope this is how they perceive it, this is the intention, is I don't ever try to run things from an authoritarian or an autocrat perspective. There are times where I will make executive decisions, but they're usually very small ones. We recently had a former mod of another server come over and was being very generous in sharing things with us. So we, let them bypass a certain level of security, because this person's been running other modded servers for huge creators for a while. And they clearly wanted to talk about some stuff. So, of course, I'm going to streamline that. But generally speaking, I don't really do anything without asking my mods. I generally try to ask everyone in the community what their thoughts are. I've had arguments with people in the community. Some of my favorite people in my community, Thanagor, Quinn, everybody, there's some really great discussions I've had, especially with people I disagree with. Hell, one of the guests we're going to have in the future, beyond safe words, God, if I remember correctly, she's a doctoral candidate that's doing kink research and stuff on coercion. She's super fucking cool. And this lady, deigns to come into our little Discord and hang out with us. That's freaking cool. Let's see what we got here. This is the kind of thing the authoritarian parents could easily make way worse or more permanent, isn't? Yes, absolutely, Tiamat. Because by definition, if the parent is always hypervigilant and that is always waiting to strike out when something's done wrong, then it reifies that particular thing. Minerva said, where someone says something and it feels like it's directed and targeted at you, even if it wouldn't necessarily. Yeah, it's this assumption of attribution. It's not the fundamental attribution error, because you're not just basing on a small thing. It's that something about what they said is really touching on something inside you. This is what we talked about in the triggers discussion with Gestalt therapy, the video that 4 people watched. But basically the idea is that the mind looks for meaning. And essentially what happens is when it brings up these figures, these ideas of a structure to which it sort of attributes reality, we tend to heuristically bring up these sort of structures, these ideas of a map of how things go, and then we act from them, right? So if somebody says something and it hits on a button that feels like something your parents said, your friends said, your first lover said, whoever, and then you suddenly feel very attacked, that person may have meant none of that.
Yeah. I think that's especially another case that I see this a lot with is when there's somebody close to you who is either dealing with chronic illness or another mental illness or something like that, especially some of the ones that have different mood shifts. I think it's really easy for people, especially in couples, to assume that there's more going on or that there's something directed. Right, and I deal with PMDD, okay, or premenstrual dysphoria disorder. Intense moods are part of it, and that's just a regular hormone shift. But if you're not looking out for that, no, I might be kind of cranky and irritated, not because of anything that everybody else did, but just because my body is shifting for reasons that I can't control. And I think it's one of those things. I hear other people that I talk to with PMDD talk about this too, though, where sometimes, people close to us can kind of get wrapped up in this, assume that there's more anger going on or more irritation or some other reason that this is happening, when really, no, it's just a body thing.
Well, and the thing is that like it's really easy to do this. You'll see parents sometimes do this personalization thing where like, say their younger kid does something, and you'll hear a parent say something like, and we've talked about this with authoritarian parent, but they'll say something like, "Oh, he's just doing that to spite me," like despite the fact that kid does not have that level of comprehension. It's because the parent is taking it personally. They believe that the stress that is being brought up by the situation with the kid is somehow directed at them, right? So we got a couple different things. Question. Let's see. So how do I get rid of the guarding after getting out of foster care? It's been a year, but I'm still in guard. So my recommendation, UA cosplay, would be, I think it would be really beneficial to use mindfulness practices and relaxation as a way to deal with things. There's a lot of really good relaxation videos on YouTube that you can kind of listen to while you're chilling and relaxing. I think you have to learn how to sort of give yourself deep body relaxation and allow yourself to kind of calm the body down. A lot of times when stress like that sticks around, it's not because you're doing anything, it's because the body becomes so habituated, that is so used to being in a stressful position, that it just kind of gets stuck there, if I'm honest. Let's see what we got over in this chat. So nope.
Minerva's got
like where someone says something and it feels like directed. Yeah, that one we covered. Schubert Du said, I think a lot of paranoia or even delusions revolves around this sort of thought patterns. Absolutely. If someone, for example, had, say like paranoid schizophrenia, this is a really good example that I've seen recently. Let's say someone had somewhere in the schizoid category and like they're schizophrenic, paranoid schizophrenic or schizoaffective. And for them, the idea of the judgments of people is so overly intense that it becomes almost like catatonia inducing. I know that's hard to imagine, but that's a thing, right? And it's because they can't get out of their heads as far as how much that delusion is kind of overtaking them. But the delusion is based on a fairly regular human thing. And there's a pretty good reason why we have this. I mean, based on everything I can make a guess on, I would say, I think it's one of the things about us that allows us to figure out the social systems. We tend to kind of like feel out and see kind of where we are in any given situation. We try to figure out how we are within the tribe or within the group or the community. And we're always kind of making sure we're under, we're still safe, we're still part of things. In tribal societies, that was probably really useful. But in our society nowadays, especially how atomistic we are, it's probably a little harder.
I just like Minerva saying, well, it's cool to know there's an official name for this. I just call it paranoia brain.
Yep. Tiamat, this feels like something I've seen a lot. Parents seeing their child's behaviors directed specifically at them when it wasn't. Yeah, like, again, like, this is going to come off as really weirdly cold, but bear with me. Kids are little egocentric machines. Like, they're their needs machines, right? Like, a kid's like, I want food, I want, like, to be warm, I want to be hugged. Like, they're very simplistic in that regard. So there isn't, like, this Machiavellian discussion they're having about screwing over. It's just they're trying to show their need, and if someone's like not meeting that need, the kid escalates. We've seen this in emotional focus therapy with attachment stuff. There's a video I watched. I mentioned this previously. Oh, thank you so much. Ooh, someone just became a new patron. Thank you. It won't show up on the birthday thing. I will have to add it after this stream, but thank you so much. That is so cool.
Yeah.
So
I have another I think teachers, you got to be real careful as a teacher not to get into this one too.
Well, real quick, yeah, because I think the thing is like, let me get back to the attachment example.
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned this in the video about being really kind of like pissed off about a training that I went through, but there was some good stuff about it. They showed a video where this baby was like hanging out with the mom, and the mom was playing, and it was really great. And then all of a sudden, what sort of happened was they asked the mom to stop, and the mom turned around, came back. Her face was absolutely 100% like stone. And every time the baby tried to interact, laugh, or smile, didn't react. And eventually the baby went from trying to play, trying to coerce her into interaction. And then eventually what happened was the baby started crying. The behavior escalates if the need isn't met. In fact, I can make the argument that for a lot of things with kids, this is just the case. They're just more sophisticated as they get older. I feel like autism does that to me too. That's probably fair, especially if you have a hard time reading social cues. Then it can be easy to read into someone judging you because it might be safer to do that than try to figure out something that might be much more difficult. Oh, Patella, I'm glad you've seen that video. Also, you're named after the kneecap. I feel like customers run with like the childlike level 2. They just want their needs met, no more or less. Yes, to some degree, though I will argue it depends on the field. If you're talking about like fast food or certain levels of customer service, no, I actually think that's just a return to some sort of neo-feudalism. Honestly, these people like treat you like less human. Tiamat can confirm the specific. I have schizoaffective, the bipolar type. Yeah, that's what schizoaffective is. So it's like always attacking myself. Yep, makes sense because you're always under the impression that other people hate you or don't like you. Tova, we love you. Please know that. This made me feel this way. Twists into this person did this to make me feel this way, and it can feel like the false dilemma that either the hurt was intentional or maliciously careless. Absolutely, the Greek cheek. That is exactly correct. Or green cheek. I keep saying Greek. Why does it say the green cheek? That's a. If I screwed this up more, it's gonna be a thing. Well, and UA cosplay. I mean, immediately after the experiment, like this was 3 or 4 seconds later, the mom immediately responded. The baby got their needs met. This isn't gonna do any lasting harm, but it does show what happens when a parent, in over a long period of time, acting that way it'll actually cause a lot of damage to a person over time. But the one time, it'll be fine. The baby's okay. I assure you the babu is perfectly fine. I saw the rest of the video, and they are super cute. The green kachik. There we go. The spaces really do help. Thank you. Do you have anything more on this? I know you mentioned the stuff with teachers.
Oh, yeah, just in general, I think teachers especially need to watch out for this, especially when you've got a classroom full of students and you're dealing with like umpteen different stressful situations. And I think we've probably all been there where like some teachers just kind of seem to take shit personally, or I think I've seen some cases where like rules get overexerted, on certain students, sort of thing, to deal with this. And they've done studies on this too, where like nearly all of the time the reason students were acting out weren't for any reason to do with the teacher. Generally, they were bored. There was other things going on. Needs. They
were anxious. They had something going on. Yeah.
So I think that's the other group of people. This is probably one to look at with.
So the Green Kachik said, "I've heard it said everyone thinks they're the main character in their own story, and that is helpful for me to remember that people have their own rich inner worlds and reasons for doing things." Yeah, they absolutely do. You are living, like, I'm going to make something very abundantly clear. You are living in a narrative. That doesn't mean the world's not real or we want to go into subjective, like, a perspectival hell. But what it does mean is that there's a very clear thing in the world that affects where you are always sort of telling a story. By the way, UA cosplay, I'm sorry to hear that. That sucks. As someone who also got brought up by a mom who had a lot of emotional issues, I resonate and I feel really sad for that. Fair. I still need to see more seasons of that. I've been so lazy on My Hero. Oh, you gods, yeah, happy or angry, and that's it. Yep, that's true. And again, like, Schubert 2 is like, yup, on the autism. When it comes to reading face or emotions, I can only identify happy or mad at me. Yeah, that's fair. So, there's another half of this, and we want to make sure we cover it, and it's this part. No, meditation absolutely helps. Specifically, square breathing. Hint, hint, go watch that fucking video. Brittany, don't worry. I'm a very loving and caring mom. You also compare yourself to others, trying to determine who's smarter, better looking. How many people out there do this? How many people find themselves always sizing everyone up? Hey, if you want to call square breathing total concentration breathing, be my guest. If you ever figure out how to make water come off a sword and cut through a demon, be my guest and also teach me. Yeah, so like, one of the things I see with a lot of like really sort of emotionally abused people is that often if they have parents who sort of like pushed academics or some type of achievement on them, they get in this thing where they're always sizing everyone up, and they either have to be way better, which gets into some egocentrism or some colloquial narcissism, or water breathing's better, you Cosmo, sorry. Or they're always sort of looking at themselves and always judging how they're less than. This comes a lot from worth issues, where someone will look at another human being and immediately assess and sort of place them in the position of, this person is less than me. This person is to some degree better than me in this, and this reason. I've gotten better with this, but I've used to constantly compare myself to others as an excuse to reinforce my bad self-worth. Yup. You want to get into some fun fucking metacognition? Here's a fun one. How often does your self-worth stuff cause you to lash out because you get so upset about the fact that the other person may leave you or treat you poorly, to which you then be really shitty to them, in which case then they get mad at you, and then you sort of self-prophecy create this like thing that happened that didn't have to, but it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because you made it happen by being so upset about the fact that this person supposedly hated you or was going to leave when they may not have ever thought of doing that. Right? Angry literati, I would say to that is it's not so much a perfectionism. I actually think it's more of a form of internally emotional self-harm in one case. Like, the constant feeling regret, same. As someone who has borderline, the constant sort of assessing myself against other people is something I have to watch for, because the vague sense of self that comes with borderline makes it very hard sometimes to figure out where I stand with people. I have a much lower opinion of myself than I think other people do. In fact, when I hear Zena talk about me, and Zena's usually pretty, positive about me as a human being, it's actually really hard to hear, because in a lot of ways I'm always sort of assuming that I am no good or harmful, or, if we have a fight, like, I'll jump to the conclusion that my actions were somehow emotionally violent, even if that's not necessarily the case. Or that they did like lasting harm and damage. So it is really hard sometimes, because if you're always assessing yourself, that's never happened to me before. Sarcasm. Fair. Yeah, vicious cycle of insecurity where you self-sabotage. Yup. Super true. I feel like I'm constantly hypervigilant. Yeah, it comes with the territory, especially if there's autism. Trauma can do this. Sometimes anxiety can just be a bitch. It's a thing. Like,
yeah, honestly, once I moved out of my parents' house as a teen, it took a while to really chill out, let some of that go, let some of the hypervigilance go. That took some time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Several people are typing. Never seen it do that before. Because we're getting a lot of people in the fucking Discord. Jesus. But yeah, by the way, join the fucking Discord. Jesus.
Oh yeah, no, we have all sorts of conversations.
Join the TGT Mental Health Foundation.
Right? And if you're like, hey, I'm watching this and I've got a thought or some way that relates to me, comment for us. Let us know. We like reading them.
To be honest, I found that I have a hard time trusting people over 50, but I won't trauma dump in public. Hey, Thanagor, you know what's funny as I get older, being sadly one of the oldest people here, is that I find that changes. I think that has to do with a proximity thing and the way we view age as power. There might be other stuff in there. Yeah, Tova, I can't look at that without showing people, but people in chat can look at that all they want. I think I saw it for a second, but thank you for putting that in spoilers. That should not be on screen. Good girl. See, I'm very familiar with that self-assessment thing, right up to the point of question about comparing self and other, at which point we're talking about something I don't experience consciously. Yeah, and it's not something everyone experiences like super consciously. It may not be something they're always aware they're doing, but it really comes up hard when we're dealing with self-worth. Right? And especially when we're dealing with like people we really truly care about, that's usually where that can get problematic. I'm sorry that feels like that, Toba. I know schizoaffective disorder can be really hard, but we love you. So I feel like we've kind of covered this. I think we've yeah, give some love to Tova in the Discord chat, folks. Please.
She's super great.
Tova's like the sweetest human being. She's literally the canary in the coal mine for the Discord. Like, she's got a good read on people. Constantly comparing, but never comparing myself favorably. Yeah, and that's why this is a distorted thought, is because, one, the need to compare in and of itself is not really helpful, and two, the comparison by its nature is not, even if it were somehow relevant or good to do so, you're not necessarily a good judge of that, if that makes any sense. So I feel like we've kind of covered this. I hope this made sense today. I feel like as we're getting through these, it's really important to understand, like, why distorted thinking is what it is. We'll say it before, we'll say it again. The purpose of distorted thinking is to sort of steer us in a cognitive way that doesn't really help us much, and it's often based on sort of errors in logic that can be seen, usually from the outside. A therapist can be good for this, and the like, but yeah. So, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we close up this one?
No, I feel like we had a really good conversation on this one. It seems like it really kind of touched a lot of people.
Okay, so we're gonna end this segment here. To all those watching the VOD, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like down below, maybe a comment. Subscribe, that would be lovely. We're trying to make 1,000 by the 16th. And we're, if you want to get notified, ring the bell. If you want to help out the channel, please feel free to donate. Streamlabs.com/transgirltherapist/tip. It's probably also in the YouTube chat as well as in the Discord chat. You could donate as low as $1. You can donate far more if you want. All of it goes towards helping the channel grow, getting better equipment, all that stuff. You can also become a patron at patreon.com. We have tiers as low as $3 and some as high as $45, and got a lot of really good stuff there, possibly future stickers. So, with that said, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.